There really aren't salespeople. There's the owner. It's the owner that's going out and doing the sales. And they're setting the appointments on their phone and putting in Google Calendar, showing up at the door, not really having a lot of process behind it. It's just, let me do my measurements and I will give you a price. That's it. All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Build to Win podcast. We are here to do is to help contractors and business owners be more successful in their businesses. So we're going to be talking a lot about the different levels of business. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the 0 to 1, right? So we're starting at the very beginning.
Yeah. Where most contractors in our industry are currently sitting, right? That $0 to $1 million mark. I believe I've seen some data in the past, 92% of contractors never go beyond $1 million in annual revenue. And 97% of all contractors make a 3% or net less profit. So let's talk about, what's important. What does that contractor look like right now? It's probably going to be a ton of our listeners here that are going to probably relate to what we've seen. And then let's give them some information on how to get to that next level if they choose to be.
Yep, sounds great. So let's talk about windows and doors by men with tools and your journey, John. Let's start with the org chart. At this point, and it's probably pretty simple, but let's talk a little bit about that. What does your org chart look like when you're first starting up?
It's what everybody's org chart looks like when they're first starting out, right? They're wearing all the hats, right? They're the CEO and president, whatever they want to call themselves on their business card, but typically they're like myself, overworked and underpaid. So you're running the day-to-day business, and that includes all of the marketing. You're going out, you're going to homes, you're answering the phones, or you may have somebody answering the phone for you, but you're going to the customer's appointments, you're selling the jobs. So you're your your salesperson. You're ordering the jobs, right, with the manufacturer. You're the administrator, ordering department. You're receiving those jobs, so you're the warehouse guy. You're scheduling those jobs, so you're the confirmer of the scheduler. And then, you're installing them, or you might have a small team of installers, but you're either the installer or the production manager, right? So very simple. Most of these companies may have a few people typically. On the production side of the business, the admin side is still on the production, right? And most of these owners tend to be, doing their marketing. They may outsource some of it to these outsourced marketing companies, most of the time unsuccessfully. So they're looking for cheap, inexpensive ways to generate leads. But either way, they're responsible with that. So most of these owners are marketing for themselves, selling for themselves, and then they may have a small team built in on the back end, right? The post-sales stuff. And that's typically what you say. Most of those companies can have 2, 3 installers, 4 installers up to the $1 million mark. A lot of the owners are doing the actual, doing the installs themselves too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Jonathan? So that's your typical $0 to $1 million org chart, and like what the owner's doing every single day. What does it look like from a tech stack perspective? I mean, you've worked and seen companies at this level, right? So what are they using? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that people will usually set up is QuickBooks, right? I mean, most people in this industry, love it or hate it, or use QuickBooks, and that's a good start. That's you're going to need some sort of accounting, some sort of financial records. Might as well, get started, on with QuickBooks. And besides that, there's really not a whole lot else, right? You might be on like Excel or like Google Sheets to track some different information, just to track your leads, Google Calendar for your appointments, right? That's a very common one. Or even if you're using, Apple, I don't do the Apple stuff very much, but iCloud or Apple Calendar or whatever it is, those are kind of your 2 key tools, right? It's your calendar and it's your financials.
So no CRM. Where are they they typically housing their customer information, the data, right? Name, address, phone number, QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
Allows to do that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you're not using QuickBooks, what are they doing besides?
it's sometimes it's just writing it down, or it's they're using their calendar even, right? That they're just like, okay, I've got all my customer information in my calendar, and that's going to be my record. Of course, there's spreadsheets, right? So that's not that's not too uncommon either. Just tracking all of the different leads and where they are in the process in a Google Sheets, right? I mean, you can get that pretty much for free. One thing that a lot of people don't do that I really suggest that they do. It's not expensive at all. But a lot of people still, even as they're growing larger, are using free Gmail accounts and things like that. So I might have, my contractor business at gmail.com, which it's okay, but it's not expensive to get your own domain, and it's not hard to get your own domain. You just go to Google Workspace, or Microsoft 365. I tend to prefer the Google side, but you go and you get your own domain, and it just adds a level of professionalism. It's really cheap, really easy. And that's going to serve you better in the future as well, as you continue to start to send emails at higher volumes, and being able to look better to the spam bots and everybody else. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't do. That's really easy to do, even at the very beginning.
Do you see people on the production side still using like physical job folders and stuffing invoices and notes and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think as the newer generations are coming up, there's less and less of that. But yeah, there's still plenty of people doing that, in the beginning and for way too long for that matter. But yeah, that's not all that uncommon either. But
so physically filing job envelopes and
in a file cabinet,
file cabinets, file cabinets all over the office,
Do you have sticky notes?
Do you have a file cabinet anymore, John?
I do have one. I don't know if I've opened it in quite a while. So yeah, I do have one.
I have a very small file cabinet, basically one bin, and it just holds all my very important physical information, like the mortgage docs for the house, tax returns, paper copies, like important stuff, and it's probably, I don't know, half full. All the other stuff is stored online.
Well, how about the safe? Where do you keep the safe in your house? So I think that's something.
No safe in the house here. No. So from a production standpoint, you see contractors, and again, in the 0 to 1 million, they're typically a lot of paper, right? Writing down on notepads.
A lot of paper, lots of systems that are, good to start, just not really scalable.
Living and working in their truck.
Yeah.
Their work truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Working off their cell phones sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, cell phones, tablets, whatever they got. That's definitely something but that's something honestly that people do even in later stages, right? I mean, for, usually more specific functions and for their specific responsibilities. But yeah, I mean, they're just, they don't have somebody in the office that can handle different tasks. So they have to do those things out in the field and, out on the road. So yeah, that's
what about estimating, right? Like, how do you see them typically estimating jobs?
I mean, it's, for the most part, it's a lot of paper, it's written down. And or on a Google Doc. We talked a little bit about my story getting started, but what I saw when I got my bathroom remodeled, way back when, and was kind of the start of the idea for Builder Prime. My contractor sent me a Microsoft Word doc, and I had to print it out and sign it and all of that. I don't think it was all that robust. It was just, here's the scope of work and here's how much it costs, print it out, sign it, scan it, send it back. And, it's still being done quite a bit today. So whether, maybe more on a Google Doc, more so than a Microsoft Word, but that's not too uncommon here either. So that's, yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about sales, marketing, production in a company that's just getting off the ground and growing to that $1 million mark. let's start with let's start with the marketing side, and how do you get those first leads?
Oh, well, as cheap as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're bootstrapping typically at that zero, the zero mark when you first start. And so you're looking for, marketing at the cost of free 99. I like to call it free 99. So you're looking for all those free lead sources. So you're going to your friends, your family, your neighbors, you're telling them what you're doing, right? So you're trying to generate referrals and typically your first couple of customers, you're doing impeccable work, right? So that, and you're asking them for referrals and you're hoping that they repeat. And there are companies that have built large businesses even beyond the $1 million mark that just do repeat and referral, right? So you're going to find most of these companies that are in there. You do see some others where they'll start to, spread out a little bit. They'll go to a company. They'll get a website built for, a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. They'll go on the web. They'll do some SEO. They may capture their Google My Business listing. Some of them will, some of them won't. Yeah, you'll post on free sites like the Facebook Marketplace. You'll join all the local parents groups in your market, and you'll spam the hell out of it with ads, right? Like, hey, we're doing this. And sometimes the administrator of said group will be nice and they'll let you post. And most of the time you'll be met with a ban, right? But you're doing whatever you can, right? Like guerrilla marketing, right? You're putting up signs on poles, your yard signs, you're going around, you're walking in a neighborhood, you're putting cards in people's mailboxes, which is illegal, but you're still doing it, right? That's typically what it looks like when you're first starting out. What have you seen, John? I mean, you've got built time there. You see lead sources all the time.
Yeah. I'll get to that in a moment. But I'm curious, like, what about canvassing at that stage and knocking on doors? Obviously, it's something that you as the owner most likely are going to be doing yourself. But is that a way that you can?
Well, at that stage, 0 to 1 million, or especially starting out, you are the canvasser, right? And I've known people that have started successful businesses by going around and knocking on doors, and they've built large companies. And then I know people that, those guys swear by it, and I know other guys that have tried it and failed miserably. So, but yeah, it is a lead source. I've seen new companies go out, knock on doors, drum up business in the neighborhoods, and yeah, you can be successful with that as long as you're okay with getting the door slammed in your face and being told no 95 out of 100 times. Yep. If you're resilient and being told no doesn't bother you, then it's perfect for you. Get out there and knock some doors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's something that doesn't have to cost you any money. You can just go walk around the neighborhood.
Okay, you're free, right? You're just looking for free, right? At that point, to me, your most important asset is time. But when you're starting out, you have all the time in the world, right? So you might as well use it. So you're looking for these free, creative ways to drum up leads, right?
Yeah.
You need leads to do anything else, right? I mean, it's been so long. I remember Craigslist back in the day. You could post Craigslist ads and they were free, and you can write HTML in an HTML builder and make like a landing page on the ad itself. And, I'm talking 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, you could generate some business. Probably weren't the best customers, but you could drum up business, right? These are just things that I've tried. But as you grow, right, like that's typically in that 0 to 1 million. That's somebody that's probably doing less than 300K. You start to grow beyond that. You start looking for a couple of other lead sources. So you may mess around with some digital marketing like AdWords or hire an agency. You may start to do some social media advertising. You probably at this point will go and get, or build a Facebook, Instagram, TikTok profile, correct? You may start buying a few lead aggregators, leads from like Angie's List and Home Advisor and Modernize and stuff like that. And you'll probably struggle with that because you don't have a call center that's able to get on the phone with them quick enough and convert the opportunity into an appointment. So that's typically what your 0 to $1 million company looks like. If you look under the hood, and you can confirm this because you see this, they'll probably have anywhere from 3 to 5 lead sources, with repeat and referral being number one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, so I think one of the things that I see pretty frequently for, young companies just starting out and kind of trying to grow up to that 1 million ceiling there, they are using the home advisors and the Angie's lists and paying for some of those leads. That can be, it gets expensive pretty quick. But it can be useful to generate at least a few leads, and you sell one of those jobs, it'll work out. I do see people doing that quite a bit. One other thing that
just a quick side note, and hold that thought, just because this is something that I had to learn, right? From my experience. When you're dealing with lead aggregators, right? Angie's List, Home Advisor, Modernize, if they're generating the lead and then selling it to you for a price, they're a lead aggregator, right? So if you haven't, because there's thousands of them now, right? I named the top 3. What you have to realize is, if you do not have someone that is at a desk with access to a phone that can call them within 1 minute of receiving that lead from that lead aggregator, you are going to waste a lot of money. You cannot be the type of contractor that is installing on your job today and paying for these leads and getting these notifications and saying, I'm going to call them later, because you're never going to contact them, right? I mean, your appointment set rate from something like that, your contact rate will be less than, from my experience, less than 3%, right? So the key to dealing with a lead aggregator, and this is important because most newer contractors don't know this, right? The larger contractors do this successfully, is to call that opportunity within 30 seconds, ideally within 10 seconds, as soon as it's received, right? Now, there's tech stacks and programs like dialers and stuff like that we'll get into later in the podcast that do that. But the point is, you have to have somebody physically waiting by the phone to be able to convert those leads. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of money and you're going to grow frustrated with it quickly, like I did way back in the beginning. I was like, this is horrible. I can't believe it's a scam. And then for years I felt that way. And then I finally learned, like today, we use lead aggregators as a part of our marketing mix. And we do pretty well with them, right? It at least justifies the cost of marketing. So just want to tell you, if you don't have somebody that can call within 30 seconds, look for another lead source and deal with that at another level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we preach speed to lead all the time. And I don't know if I knew it was that low of a set rate. When you don't get to them in the first.
It is that low. I mean, there is data that says if you wait like an hour, like if you wait longer than 3 minutes, your contact rate goes down by like. And I'm spitballing here. It's not exact, but you could probably Google it and look it up. Like the chances of you contacting them decrease by like half after 3 minutes. And especially with the lead aggregator, you got to remember, at least right now in August of 2024, I believe they're making some changes to the laws about how lead aggregators can handle it. But right now, they're selling that lead to you and 3 to 5 other contractors. And if you're buying a lead that my company's buying, we're calling it within 10 seconds. And guess what? If you wait an hour to your lunch break because you're installing a kitchen today, right? By the time you get around to an hour, my company and probably 2 other companies that have this technology, or even a person by the phone that can dial right away, have called them, and they're just not going to pick up your phone call because it's like, hey, I've got my 2 or 3. I've talked to enough people, and you're just throwing dollars out the window at that point. So, point I'm making is, if you don't have that infrastructure in place on the call side, table it, right, and test it in the future. Do something else with the limited marketing dollars you have now at this point in your business.
Yeah, that's great advice, John. One other thing that I don't know if I've seen it myself, but it seems like it would work pretty well is getting on social networks like Nextdoor. And people are asking, hey, I need help with, I think it's a lot of handyman stuff, but, hey, I'm looking for somebody to install a roof, or I'm looking for, some new windows. Can anybody recommend a contractor? And you can respond to those, right? Just get on the social network and respond to those.
Listen, you should be creating profiles Nextdoor, Yelp, Jesus, John. I mean, help me name them, right? I mean, they're free. They're free to sign up to put a profile there. Nextdoor, Yelp, put some of the other Hows, right? Put some pretty pictures up. It's free to take pictures of you, of the beautiful work you're doing. You should be showcasing that, right? You should be showcasing that on sites like I don't know if Pinterest works, but it's free. So put it there. Hows, your Facebook, your Instagram. Instagram is heavily it's for creators. It's creativity. They like to see photos and reels. Like you can do all of this stuff for free. You can become your own little influencer, right? It's all, like I say, free 99, right? What's some of the other sites that they can sign up to, John?
Well, one of the things that I was holding off on talking a little bit about, but I want to talk about, Facebook, Instagram, and those types of networks a little bit more, because in the tech world, they talk a little bit about when you're starting up with a new, software system, for example, you can leverage your network. If you have a following, a lot of people that are, on tech Twitter or X these days, and talking about different kinds of topics, and they build an audience, they build a little bit of a following, and you can then, sell into that audience. But with home improvement, you can, anybody can be your audience, right? It doesn't just have to be other tech businesses or things of that nature. Anybody can be your audience. So if you've got a network of, quote unquote friends and other, friends, family, acquaintances, and you've built up over the years, I've got, say you've got 700 Facebook friends. You do a job, you post it on Facebook, and you put it out to your crowd. Hey, look at the work I'm doing. Please recommend me. Please refer me. If you have any business for me, tap into that network. I think that's something that works really, really well in the very beginning. It's not really sustainable, right? Because at some point you're going to kind of exhaust that network, and it's not going to produce anything for you. But to get some initial business.
But you're like most of these people, they're experts in their field, right? And they produce beautiful work. And many of these people are craftsmen. They know how to do their thing, right? So they have all of this information that they have here inside that they could be sharing out onto those free networks, right? Like, and most of us have a smartphone with a beautiful camera, all the iPhones. Notice I didn't say Android, John.
Yeah.
All the iPhones have beautiful cameras these days. You can shoot in high quality. As a matter of fact, look at my screen. That's an iPhone. Look at John's. That's Android. You can see the difference between the two. I'm just busting your chops. But you have everything in the palm of your hands at work. Step back. Take some beautiful pictures. Take some videos. Go on Instagram. Create a couple of reels. Now they even have reels on Facebook, right? Like, this is all free. Create some YouTube content. Shoot a picture of the job when it's finished, 3 minutes. It's free. Put it out there, and you never know. You might just create the type of content that people in your market will enjoy, and it costs you nothing, right? And you can scale up quickly by creating this free content these days. I've seen people do it.
And this might cost a little bit of money, but it's not too expensive to get a drone, especially if you're doing exterior work. Get a drone, make it, fly it around the outside of the house, and record the siding that you installed, show all the new windows that you installed. And it just adds another level of professionalism, to that type
especially
of thing.
Starting out, like I said, you have time, right? Especially when you're starting out. If you have time, record everything you're doing, right? Put it out there on the networks, all the free sites, the networks, and you never know, man. You get a couple of these reels that go viral, and the phone starts ringing off the hook, right? I can't tell you how to do it because I don't have any viral content, but there are people out there that did it, right?
But tap your network. Just reach out. I mean, ask all of your friends and family. Just post them. Ask, hey, I'm looking for, I'm starting this out. I do really good work, and I'm looking for referrals.
Yeah.
That's I think that's a great way to get started as well. Just
this is typically what a $0 to $1 million company looks like on the marketing side. We're giving tips and tricks and stuff like that. What about on the sales side, Jonathan? Typically, what have you seen? Because you do also in Build a Prime see the sales data and the sales people, and you can see what is a typical.
There really aren't salespeople. There's the owner. Again, we talked about the org chart. So it's the owner that's going out and doing the sales, and they're setting the appointments on their phone and putting the Google Calendar, showing up at the door, not really having a lot of process behind it. It's just, let me do my measurements and I will give you a price, and that's it.
And usually not on the spot.
Yeah, sometimes on the spot, sometimes not. Right. So, I think a lot of times
let me go back to the office. Let me look at my price list. Let me research this. I'll get back to you in a few days, and I'll email you a quote.
Sometimes they're not even doing that, right? It's just a wild ass guess. And hopefully I'm going to make some money here, but I'm really not sure. But I don't recommend that.
I've done a few wags in my life, Jonathan. Wild ass guess, and then got burned for it. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen, there's not a lot of process at that stage, and I think this is one of the biggest things that you can, as you're starting to grow. This is one of the biggest areas where you have an opportunity to make some major improvements and propel you to the next level. But at this stage, it's not there unless you've got some experience from before, and you're leveraging some of that. But I guess from your perspective, John, especially if you're bidding against maybe another contractor, how do you approach that when you're that small?
Well, the first thing you have to realize when you're an owner and you're running appointments is you have to get comfortable with the fact that you are a salesperson, whether you want to admit it or not. You are there to sell the job, and you are typically competing against 2 to 4 other contractors, right? So you have to get comfortable with selling. Sales is a dirty word, right, for most people. But unfortunately, in order for you to convert jobs into installs, you need to sell. You can't call it anything else, right? So you have to become comfortable with the fact, and you have to teach yourself, if you don't know how to sell naturally, how to sell, right? You have to read some books. You probably should start watching some YouTube content. There's tons of gurus out there. I'm not going to start naming them all. But the most important part is, once you start to learn, or even if you do know how to sell, you have to start learning how to document the process, right? You can't just go into a job, an estimate, and just wing it and just say, well, I'm in this. Successful companies have, 5, 7, 10-step selling processes, right? 1 call close, even a 2 call close. I'm not a fan of the 2 call close. We're a 1 call close company because I think there's no better time to sell a customer and have them buy than right now, right? Out of sight, out of mind. But I know people that do a 2-step successfully, but they have a process for it, right? And most owners at this level, they're just, hey, all right, you know what? Let me go home, eat some dinner, change out of the dusty clothes if they even do, right? And let me go to the customer's home and let's see how it goes. Let me look at this kitchen today, and they talk to the customer about the project. And again, these people are experts. Most of these people, right? They know how to design a kitchen and build a kitchen and deliver a beautiful product, but they don't know how to portray that to the customer, right? Because sales is all about perceived value, right? I always say, right? When you have a sale, it's because value exceeds the price. When you don't have a sale, it's because price exceeded the value, right? And look, guys, selling is storytelling, right? If you want to sell, let's use windows as an example. If you want to sell a $500 window successfully, you got to tell a $1,000 story, right? If you want to sell a $1,000 window, you got to tell a $2,000 story, and on and on and on and on, right? It's storytelling. The best salespeople tell the best stories. Now, I'm not telling you to lie. I'm just telling you to take what you're doing, right, every single day and create a process for showing that customer, right? Because you're all experts, but you just take it for granted. You think, oh, customer would think that. You'd be surprised what the customer doesn't know. And it's the smallest little details that really count, right? How can you make yourself different from your competition? Create a process wrapped around that where you're building value. You're exceeding their expectations. You're going in, you're different than everybody else. And then document that, because at this point, to scale beyond, you're going to have to hire salespeople and you're going to have to teach them your process. Look, there are no saviors in this business, right? Like another mistake contractors make even in this level. They bring on their first salesperson and they're like, oh, yeah, you were a great salesperson for my competitor or XYZ company. And you come in, you're like, this guy's going to be great. And he's got his own way of selling. And most of the time, it's the way that their competitors sold, which is totally different than our business, right? And it's not a fit. And he comes in and he completely bombs. And then the owner gets frustrated. I hired the right guy. No, look, you have to create your process for your company. You can talk to consultants and you can, get ideas, but you have to document a 3, 5, 10 step, 15 step selling process, whatever it is. And then when you hire your first salesperson, you say to them, this is how we do things here at the Men with Tools. Right? This is what we say to our new sales reps. This is the way we do it. Forget about everything you've learned. I don't want to hear about it. This is the way we do it. This is our process. And then, typically most of our sales reps, they get on the system, we hold them accountable, and they're successful. The ones that aren't, we part ways as friends. But that's what you see in most of these newer companies with the sales owners out there, kind of just spitballing it, winging it, no process. Don't even really know their numbers, right? Like pricing and estimating how to estimate on the spot. Don't know what their closing rates are, their NSLIs / slugging percentage. So they're just, by the seat of their pants.
Yeah. And so you're talking earlier about, the storytelling, right? And in order to sell a $500 window, you got to tell a $1,000 story. So people starting out might be wondering, it's just me. How do I tell a story that builds all of that value? One of the ways that you can do that, and this is something that I learned, with Builder Prime as well and getting started. Even if you're not a sales minded, you don't come from like a sales background or you're not a sales minded individual. Selling as the owner can be a very powerful thing. So if you go into a customer's home and say, you're talking to the owner, if you have a problem, you come directly to me and I'm going to take care of it, right? Because I have the power to take care of it. I have the power. I can customize. I can maybe go a little bit further, and above and beyond. You're working with a smaller set of customers at that point, and, you can do more as the owner and you can sell that, right? That's something that's unique about you that is going to resonate with people, right? That, so you don't necessarily have to be, a large company in order to build value in a story. Like really lean into the owner side of things.
I started out doing a presentation, which is one step in our sales process, right? From a pitch book, just a book with pictures and written text and just flipping through. That was 15 years ago, right? Now, some of us use like Google Slides. There's other companies like Engage, and there's lots of software. Some of it free, some of it you have to pay for, where you can build out a presentation, right? But like what you were just talking about is one part of the presentation. It's called your company story, right? We use 4 parts to our presentation, right? It's our company story. We want to tell them about how awesome the Men with Tools are, what we can do for you, how we can help. That's where we want to kind of shine the light on the company, how we're different. Then we want to talk about our products, our actual products, our windows, our doors, how they're different, all the different little details. Then we want to talk about our installation. What's the process look like? And we documented that. We have a 64-point installation process. And Jonathan, when I was starting out, you were working with me. You were actually helping me with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
17, right? 17, 18, something like that, or maybe it was 19. We were working on this together. And we took those parts and we took that out and we put it into our presentation. So list all of the steps from the moment you get to the door to the moment you collect the check on every single job. List them out. number them, right? And that's also good for the production department, which we're going to get to next. But so it's company story, products, your installation, and then warranty. What happens if something goes wrong? What does that look like? That's 4 steps to presenting value in your selling process. But that's one part of your selling process.
And the details, I mean, the more details you can provide, the more detailed you can be about how you're going to go about the job and setting those expectations. You're going to build trust and you're going to build confidence with the prospective customer. And that goes a long way. And that's something that, again, a larger company might not even do. All right. So obviously you're doing that, John, in a really powerful way. But not everybody does that. And that's another way to add to the value of the story, in that story that you're telling.
So at the end of the day, Jonathan, sales has 3 functions. And I want to keep it simple for the $0 to $1 million contractors, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to ask questions, right? You have to find facts and gather information, right? Because you want to see what their issues are, right? And try to come up with a solution, right? So that's the part where, the customer's taking around, showing you what they want done. You're pointing out things to the customer, making suggestions, right? But it's beyond that. Like, you have to sit down, like we call it a needs assessment. Most people call it a needs assessment or a needs analysis. You have to have a set of, like 5 to 20 preset questions that you ask them, like, relevant to your project. Like, so when are you thinking about approximately starting this project? How long have you owned the home? Tell me about your experience, working with do you have any experience working with other contractors? What does a successful project look like to you? What's the age of the windows? How long have you been thinking about replacing these? Like, there's a bunch of questions that you have to ask the customer before you go to the next step, which is the presenting, right? So you have to gather your information as best as you possibly can before you present the solution. This is my kitchen cabinets, or these are my windows, because you have to show them what they're really looking for. You just can't walk in and say, hey, what do you want? When do you want it? And how much you looking to spend? The customer's going to look at you like you're crazy. You have to gather the facts first, then you present, then you show them the solution. And then the last part's negotiation, right? And this is the part that most people are uncomfortable with, right? Salespeople, not so much. But you can certainly do the first 2 parts really well so that when you get to the back end, selling, closing, right, negotiating, it becomes much easier. If you do a really good job of gathering information and then showing and providing a solution, getting to the end, the close, is going to be very easy. So just understand that for all you guys that don't really sell. Concentrate on that.
And I got one more thing I want to say about the sales side of things, actually sales and marketing together, before we move on to the production side. But you had mentioned earlier, John, that not sometimes sales feels like a dirty word, or that not everybody's really comfortable with that. But not only do you have to get comfortable with that, you have to embrace the fact that in order to be successful, you are a sales and marketing company.
You are.
That you happen to sell roofing, or you happen to sell bath remodels, or whatever it is, but you are a sales and marketing company. If you do not embrace that idea, the chances of you being successful are very, very low.
There are no installations happening in this business without marketing and sales. You cannot install something if you haven't generated the lead, however you're doing it, even if it's free, right? So like, I find a lot of people at this business, at this level in this business, they're like, well, I don't do any marketing. Well, they'll say, because all of my business is repeat and referral. Well, that's marketing, right? That's marketing. You're doing a great job with your customers and they're referring you. That's still marketing, right? So you're still marketing, because without that lead, and you wouldn't have an opportunity. And then you still have to go. You have to go look at the job and convert the job. You have to sell the job. Now, again, some of these owners don't view themselves as salespeople, because they do a great job on the customer's home. Customer refers them. People see the job. Oh my God, this guy is does beautiful work. This person does beautiful work. Let me call them. They're kind of pre-sold. So, most of them are, we call them laydowns, meeting with laydown customers, right? But again, if you want to scale beyond that, you have to realize that you have to learn to market beyond repeat and referral, and you have to sell. You have to sell other opportunities that aren't repeat and referral. And if you're happy with this and at your current income level, and this is your definition of success, by all means, stay right there, right? I'm not telling you what to do, but if you want to get beyond and if you want more, you're going to have to learn to do more. And you're going to have to be comfortable with the fact that you are a sales and marketing company, like Jonathan said. And I only say this because I struggled with this for years because my background is production. I came out of the install department. My grandfather, my father, myself, I'm third generation carpenter, right? Started in the business in 1995 with my dad, installing windows, doors, hardwood floors, doing all kinds of interior carpentry work, kitchen cabinets. My father, he is this contractor that I'm describing. He was that contractor that I'm describing. He didn't know how to market, but he had enough business for years, So the point I'm making is I have experience with it. So I'm talking about it from firsthand perspective, right?
And same with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even from the software side of things, right? I mean, when I first started out, I figured, hey, I'm going to build this great solution and, I build it and they will come. And that's just, looking back, how naive, it's kind of funny, but, it's in the software world, you have sales led organizations and you have product led organizations. Product led is, kind of like you put it out there, you list it on the app store, create a website, people find it. There's a virality to it. They come and they sign up. And on the sales led, that's really where it's like you're reaching out to people and you're talking to people and people don't sign up unless you talk to them and show them like, hey, here's how we're going to add value. We add a ton of value, but it does from the way that like our business works. And this is, I think you can make, parallels within home improvement here as well. It's just, we're not going to be able to add that value for our customers without having that sales process, the sales and marketing process. And getting the word out there and letting them know how we can help. So it's just something that you have to embrace.
You have to embrace it. You have to accept it, right? I stayed at that, $300,000, $500,000 mark for years because I struggled with the idea that I was a sales and marketing company, and I had to go learn to sell. I had to go and learn to do these things that I'm preaching here on this very podcast, right? It took me a long time too, guys. I mean, I'm 46 years old. It took me 42 years to finally get my mind wrapped around all of this stuff. And it's never too late, right? Like I said, we're going to do between $8 and $9 million this year. $300,000 to $500,000 contractor 10 years ago. Like, if I can do it, you can do it. I tell people that all the time. There is nothing special about me. It's mindset. It's learning to embrace that if you want more, you have to do these things. There's no way around it, right? Now, there's shortcuts. Listening to this podcast, we're trying to help you, right? But ultimately, you have to take what we're giving you, and you have to embrace it. You have to implement it. So there's lots of head trash in this business that you have to learn to get rid of. And for most, it takes a long time.
Yeah, mindset is something that we can talk more about mindset another time, but that's something that is more powerful than I would have ever imagined.
Look at right here. Look behind me, Jonathan. Look at the sign. Mm-hmm. Powerful quote.
Yeah. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We talked about that the last time too.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about production. And what does a production department, if you want to call it that, look like when you're first starting out and growing to reach that $1 million mark? So maybe talk a little bit about that for yourself, John. And was it just you with the tool belt? Did you have subcontractors? What did it look like?
No, just me starting out. right? I mean, for the most part, some people will come out of the start a company with a sales background, then they need an installer, but it's typically one installer. Most of the time, it's the individual. And as they grow, they may bring on like a part-time helper to help carry the tools and clean up the job sites. And, over time, that helper may develop into a mechanic 2-3 years. But typically what you see in a company that's starting out, it's one or two, one installer, maybe a helper, right? And as they grow, even through scale, like up to $1 million, they might have a small team of 4 or 5 guys, or if they're subcontracting, they might have 1 or 2 crews, maybe a third crew, typically not, no documented install processes. They probably don't really understand what their COGS are, their cost of goods sold, how much it is costing them to the material and the labor. They don't understand what gross profit margins are. They're kind of just still spitballing pricing and guessing, and, or they're getting a price from a subcontractor and only adding 20 or 30% markup to it. And they think that's enough. And it's like, I can live off of that. And for some starting out, that's okay, right? Like a lot of it depends on your fixed expenses, right? So, and it's tied to the production side, right? Because this is where you do the thing, right? Especially if you're on a accrual-based accounting, everything's accounted for after the install. That's why you should be doing it. For our newer listeners, they might not know what that is. Stick with us. You'll learn about that in later episodes. Regardless, but there's spitballing pricing, and again, at the beginning, you may have a $500 cost, right? Labor and material, and adding $500 on top of that. That might be enough money, right? And you making $500 a day, $2,500 a week. $2,500 a week. You really don't have any expenses, and you might be comfortable with that. And where most of these guys, they start to get in trouble is now they start to add on some expenses. Now they hire the secretary, right? Now they have to go out. They have to get a workers' comp insurance. They start adding on all of these expenses, fixed and variable, and they're still putting $500 a day.
And that's if you're working every day.
And working.
And, weather doesn't, get in the way of things, and
don't understand their true cost and how to pull a real profit. It starts out very simple, and usually starts out with like, hey man, I'm going to go start my own company because my boss doesn't pay me enough for this thing. Right. So, a lot of these guys make $200, $300 a day with their boss, if they're lucky. And they're like, I'm going to go out and make $1,000 a day. Right. That's their goal. And they go out and they start pricing jobs, and they start maybe making $1,000 a day if they can sell. But let's just say they settle in about $750. They're like, I'm rich. Never had this kind of money before. Right. And it feels great for the first month or two. And you typically, now what's happened, you're the cheap guy because you're not marking it up like the other companies. Right. And you do great work. Well, if you do great work and you cheat, people are going to tell other people, right? Especially in the beginning. Right. So you're going to get more inquiries. You're not really going to be selling. You're going to be selling on price. You're going to start to load up at work. You're going to quickly reach your production capacity. Now you're going to need a secretary. Now you're going to need some helpers, some other mechanic, and you're still making $1,000 a day. And now you don't realize that $1,000 a day you were making in the beginning is nothing, or maybe you're even losing money. This is how people get in trouble on the production side. They don't understand their numbers.
Yeah. Or you put yourself at risk if things ebb and flow a little bit and you don't have that consistency, and now you're carrying a lot more cost as well. So, you put yourself at a lot of risk that way.
Cash flow is very important, especially for new contract. Well, for all contractors, right? But I think that most new contractors don't understand how important cash flow is. And the reason we're talking about finance, like I said, is because you should be accounting for all of your revenue, not in the beginning on the sales side. It's for when you actually deliver the service. So all of your finances should be tied to the completion of your install, right? That's cash accounting versus accrual. And like I said, we'll go into that more in the future. But you have to know what your costs are and cash, right? Like I've seen contractors, they'll do a $20,000 kitchen, let's just say. And they'll go and they'll grab a $5,000 deposit to cover the materials. and they'll order the materials. Materials will show up 2 weeks later, and then they'll start working, right? And they'll be there for 3 weeks, and they won't ask for any more money. They'll get the second payment upon final. And now the customer owes you $15,000. And guess what happens most of the time? Well, you forgot this and you forgot, because they owe you a lot of money, right? So we have to set up what's called progress payments, right? At different milestones through the job, right? It's like, I show up on day one, right? You give me a deposit. I show up on day one. I deliver the cabinet. You're giving me more money. And I rip the cabinets. I set the cabinets. You're giving me more money. Now, this isn't the exact way to do it. You create your own progress schedule, right? Progress payment schedule. But you should be getting, in a 2 or 3 week job, you should be getting 2 or 3 progress payments and trying to keep the balance at the end as small as possible, right? And this keeps the cash flow going in your bank account, right? Because what happens is, a lot of contractors, they wait to the end. They have difficulty now collecting, right? They're not getting paid at the end. Now they got to go back. They got a punch list a mile wide, and they're going after the install they got now going on this week at night. And they're going there an hour or two. Wife's mad. Now they can't do estimates. He's not home for dinner. Kids don't see him. He can't do any more estimates. And every single day he goes there, that punch list, he's not catching up because that punch list is growing and growing. This is how people get into trouble. And John, I've seen contractors not actually even ask for it. I've seen, I'm guilty of this. When I had subcontractors, I would send subcontractors to do an install for me, right? Produce a work order, and then tell them, collect the payment after you're done. Mm-hmm. The subcontractor wouldn't collect the payment. They're like, that's not my job. And then their invoice comes at the end of the week. You look and you're like, I don't have the money. Where's the payment? Well, you didn't tell me how to collect, whatever, regardless, right? I'm not paid for the job. Yeah. And now they expect me to pay the bill. Now, if invoices coming in, expenses, and I got money out on the street. Guys, collect the money, right? It's called leverage, right? It's a lever. Take this lever and make it as long as possible in your favor, right? This is just a process. Be diligent about collecting the money. I can't stress how many contractors I've seen in our industry go out of business because they couldn't collect the money. They were busy, John. They had work everywhere. They just couldn't collect the money. Go collect the money at the end of the job. Make sure you get paid. And if there is a punch list, hold as little as possible, right? Like a window's broken as an example. Okay, and they owe me 10 grand today. Okay, great. We're going to take the final payment. Customer, what do you mean? Well, that's service, right? I'm going to tape it up. I'm going to order your part. We're going to be here in 2 weeks. I'm going to replace the part. And believe it or not, because we set that standard, because we're substantially complete, we get paid on most of our jobs. And if it becomes a real battle, we might let them hold $500. But we're substantially paid when we're substantially complete. Most of the time, 100%. Jonathan, I do $9 million a year in business, and I have a receivables list, a past due receivables list that's less than $5,000. Because I learned this lesson years ago. Collect the money.
and there's lots of strategies as we go along that we can talk about.
Let me get off my soapbox, but because I've seen so many contractors go out of business for that reason. So
yeah, and we start talking about financing and collecting online payments and things like that can really help with some of those things. So we'll certainly talk about those.
You're collecting in the beginning checks, cash, maybe credit cards, whatever the form of payment is. Get the money when you finish. You don't want to be the guy running around town trying to collect money to make payroll for the week. All right? But that's your typical production department at the $0 to $1 million. See my blood pressure raising?
Yeah, you got a little heated there.
I'm so passionate about that, man. I want to see people win.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe what we can do now is just try to tie things together, right? We talked a lot about, okay, well, you're in this 0 to 1 million stage. We talked a lot about really just getting started and, what are you doing to get off the ground, to get your first lead, sell your first job, produce your first job. What about what does it look like as you're getting a little bit closer to the $1 million mark? And what does that evolution look like? And how are you changing how you manage things as that scale? Because I mean, there's a big difference between 0 and $1 million, right?
I think on the org chart is very similar, and we'll talk about this in the next episode. You might have one or two pieces that are added to it, maybe a few more installers. You start to outsource some of the tasks, but typically the owner is still responsible, wearing most of the hats. But you start to become a really good sales and marketing company at that point, right? That's really what puts you to that next level. As far as the processes and stuff, I don't think that really gets built into the later stage of closer to that $2 million mark.
Yeah, but I mean, you're hiring somebody, right?
Well, I see there are a few hires, right? Like a salesperson, maybe a secretary. You'll have a few more installers on the production side. You'll have some help. Then you'll have more help than you did starting out, or even at 0 to 300,000, right? But as far as sophistication, it's usually not much more sophisticated. What you typically see is the owner really starts to learn and dial in on the marketing and the sales, whether the owner is doing it or they have someone else doing it for them. They do start to expand their tech stack too, because as they're spending more, they start to become more sophisticated. They start to learn quickly that they have to start tracking and managing these things. And that's typically where a guy like you comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
The product. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And, so a couple things to say there, right? I think one of the things that I've seen a lot is how that, office admin is just a really key piece that enables the owner to do more. So the owner, the owner can stay doing sales for a bit longer. The owner can continue to, focus on some of the marketing activities. Maybe even, the office manager can obviously do a lot of the admin work, can even do a little bit of the production oversight and scheduling of jobs and some customer communications.
But they're the key piece. They're the key piece in the office.
Yeah. But that office admin is, as soon as you can get that person, that enables you to do so much more, right? That's going to enable you to run more appointments. That's going to enable you to handle more leads more effectively. I mean, even as we talked about, that you maybe can start to get those lead aggregators up, and because you've got somebody that's sitting there watching. It's not as automated maybe as a more mature company, but you've got somebody sitting there and that can most likely make a call pretty quick.
Yeah, they're the hub. They're the hub of the business, right? They start to install that hub as an admin, and then everything else becomes spokes. And it really you start to see the business form around something, right?
Yeah.
And but let's save it for the next episode, John. Right? We don't want to give away too much here. We want people to watch our third episode.
Yeah.
So, I think we should cut it here. I think we discussed the 0 to $1 million mark at length. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me. My email address is John, JOHNK at themenwithtools.com. It'll be in the show notes, a link to my email address. And John, what's your email address, your contact information?
Mine is Jonathan, JONATHAN at builderprime.com.
Yeah. So if anybody needs any information, any help, please feel free to reach out to us. And I'd like to thank you for watching the Built to Win podcast.
See you all next time.
All right.